I recently got back from my 11th Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. And when I got back from that event, I put a picture on my social media. And on that picture, I said, my mom paid for the first one, and now I fly myself first class. And I had a friend reach out to me and she was like, Kyra, this is so inspirational. You should do a testimonial. And so here I am. She was with me from the beginning of my journey when I attended my first event in 2019 in Vancouver. And so she's witnessed this transformation over the years of my life and of my business. And this is the first time that I have really ever thought to do a testimonial. But I really hope to inspire people because through this work, I have taken myself from lack and debt to creating a 7-figure business, and doing so from such a place of joy and alignment and trust and surrender. And it has been quite the journey. So I discovered Dr. Joe in 2018. I had a friend who sent me a YouTube video, and he's like, you should really check this guy out. I really think you would like him. And now I have been in personal development since I was 17 years old. So at 17, I started attending seminars and programs and communication courses and leadership, like everything. And I always knew that the work I was going to be doing was very different than what I was learning in school. I never had any interest in school, to be honest with you. And so I've been in this kind of world since a very early age, and all the spiritual stuff and all of that. So I've mastered a lot of challenges in my life from a very early age, to addiction. When I was 15 years old, I was raped by 3 men. I overcame that at 19. This was all prior to Dr. Joe's work. So I've really overcome a lot in a very short amount of time. And so when I was introduced to Dr. Joe's work and I got this video, and I'm like, this is a 40-minute YouTube video. I don't have 40 minutes. So I kind of put it off for a little bit. And my friend's like, listen, I know you're going to resonate with this man. Just watch his work. And so I finally watched the video, and it was like everything clicked. Like, it was such a profound moment for me, because the work that I had done in my own life to overcome a lot of the things that I had was never from digging up the past or talking to a therapist and revisiting the situation. I never did any of that. In fact, that never worked for me. So when I found his work, I was like, finally, like this is it. This makes sense. This is the work. And so there were a lot of things that I mastered early on, but one of the things that I had not mastered was money and creating abundance. And so when I discovered Dr. Joe's work and I watched that first video, I was like, I went down the rabbit hole. So I watched the intensive and the progressive and everything I could find on YouTube. And really, at any chance I got, I was immersed in the work. And so whether I was walking, whether I was at the grocery store, driving in my car, I was just constantly putting myself in a state of learning through his work and what he was teaching. And in 2019, my mom paid for me to go to an event, and she came with me. And so this was my first event. And so we fly to Vancouver, and it's the night before, and I'm sitting in this hot tub on the rooftop of the JW in Vancouver. It's wintertime, it's beautiful. And there's this woman in the hot tub, and she says how this is her 4th event. And I had this moment of like, wait a minute, you can attend more than one of these? Like, how does anyone afford to do that? Like, I couldn't afford to get myself to the first one. And so that was kind of like the first 4-minute mile for me, right? Like, somebody was actually doing this more than once in their lifetime. Like, that's incredible. And I knew that I was going to want that. And so we're at this event. And one of the things at the time, because Dr. Joe's work obviously evolves often, at this first event, he had asked each of us to think of something that we wanted to create as an experience by the end of the event. Have it be something that, like, you can't predict where it's going to come from. Like, it's just something that you want. And I thought, man, it would be amazing to create $1,000. Like, at that time in my life, $1,000 would have felt like winning the lottery. Now, the idea is that you don't tell anyone what you're creating. And so for me, I chose $1,000, and we go through the event. The event was incredible. by the end of that event, it's the very last day, and I had kind of completely forgotten about the $1,000. And it's the very last day, and I'm sitting down, and this man walks over to me that I had met at some point previously during the event, and he hands me an envelope, and he tells me not to open it until I get to the airport. And I'm like, okay. So I put it in my backpack, and I go back to focusing on the event, and the event wraps up, and it was an amazing time. And then I'm at the airport with my mom, and we're sitting down talking, and I remember that I have this envelope. And so I open up my backpack, and I open the envelope, and inside of it is a note with 10 $100 bills, $1,000. And I look at this money, and I look at my mom, and I hand it to her because I owed her money, and she paid for this event, and it was like the most abundant thing in the moment that I could do. And that was really when I was like, okay, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna keep doing this work. Now, something I'll share that is independent of a money story, but I think is still really profound, and I know a lot of people will relate to this. Prior to that event, I always had digestive issues. I always had stomach issues. My doctor diagnosed me as having IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And so there was a lot of things I couldn't eat. And so I was that person. I was no fun. If I went to a restaurant, I was so rigid all the time with what I could eat. It was like there was no joy in going out for me. And so when I was at the event and Dr. Joe was talking about food and how typically it's the people who are most rigid with their diet that have the most issues, I was like, is he calling me out because I feel like he's talking to me? And so at the event, what I experienced in my state of elevated emotions was pure joy. It's like such a profound state of happiness. And so we're at the lunch line, and I'm looking at like this strawberry shortcake. I want it so bad. And normally I would never eat that. But something felt really different this time, and I knew something had shifted. I knew something was different about me. And so I decided that I was going to eat that, but I wasn't going to eat it in guilt. And I wasn't going to eat it with like, I don't really know. It was like, no, I was eating the strawberry shortcake, and it was going to be damn good. And it was. And so I started eating all these things at the event that I hadn't previously allowed myself to eat. And I digested that food with zero issue. And so I really realized that the state in which I was eating food was, no matter how healthy it was, it didn't matter. I was still having issues. And so when I went to the event and I had changed an aspect of myself and my emotions were different and I was feeling different, I was digesting food differently. And so I came back into my life, and let's just say today, if I call Hungry Howie's, they're like, Kyra, do you want the same order? Like, they know me, you know? So like I get to actually enjoy food, and I can eat all the things. But the important thing that I noticed for myself was when I'm eating, I'm actually eating in joy. I'm not eating in guilt. If I'm having cheese pizza, if I'm having ice cream, if I'm having steak, yes, I eat all of that. I digest it with ease because I just do. And I love it so much. So there's no more guilt when I eat food, and I've completely healed. Like IBS is no longer in my reality. Like that's an old body. So that was something that I healed in my first event. So I came home from that event, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, what are you going to do with your business and all the things? So, I opened an office when I was 24 years old, and I started taking clients after my 9 to 5 and a lot of non-traditional therapies and things like that. But I was still living pretty much paycheck to paycheck. And in 2016, I went through a very unexpected, very challenging divorce that left me in a place financially where I said to myself, I never want to depend on someone financially again. Like I want to experience financial freedom. Prior to that, it was, like I said, paycheck to paycheck. It was going to the grocery store and adding up like the items that were in my cart. Can I afford this? Let me put this back. Let me get the cheaper version of this. And I just remember wanting to go into a store. I just wanted to go into a grocery store and not have to total up what was in my cart or question if I could afford something. And today my experience is that I get to go into any grocery store. I don't even go to grocery stores. I Instacart, okay? I'm busy. I'm doing things in life. But I can buy what I want now. And so I came back and I decided I want to move my business, like really move it full-time online. And so I also decide that I want to go back to another event. Like I really want to continue to immerse myself in this work. And so people always ask me, why do you go back? Like they're shocked when they hear how many events I've gone to. And I tell them, it's like, if you want to grow a muscle and you go to the gym, you don't go one time. Like you keep going back, right? So I live the work. And it's also a desire that I have. I love being in the energy. It's just amazing. So I love to go back. And so I'm back home and there's an event that's happening in 2019, September, Niagara Falls. And it happens to be starting on the day of my birthday. And so I thought, okay, I know that I'm meant to be at this event, but I go to register, it's waitlisted. And I had this moment of like, let me put myself on the wait list. If I get in, I'm going to trust that I'm meant to be there. And I'm just going to trust that the money situation is going to work out. Because for me to still go, it felt like a stretch, right? To be able to pay that. I wasn't in a place yet where I was comfortable in spending that kind of money. But sure enough, a week before the event, I get an email that I've been accepted. I have 24 hours to register before they move on to the next person on the wait list. And I had a brief moment of like, ooh, can I pay for this? And I decide to go. And I get there, and the first day, I get a phone call. And this person says to me, there's a check that seems to have come for you in the mail. Do you want me to open this? Is this important? And I'm like, I don't know what this is because I'm not expecting any money. So this person opens up the envelope and pulls out the check, and the amount was $100 shy of covering all of my expenses to get to the retreat, the event itself, like food, hotel, $100 shy of covering everything in choosing to go for that event that week. And so what I noticed as I continued to show up for myself and make decisions based on the abundant me, the future me, all of these synchronicities and these opportunities were just finding me. And so in December of 2019, I moved my business online. I invest in a business coach, and here's what started to happen for me. And I think this is important because I know a lot of times people want to know, like, what were you doing? What meditation were you doing? I was doing all the meditations. Like I was doing everything. But one of the things that I noticed as I started to build my business online was that I had this belief of, it can happen for her, but it can't happen for me. She can be successful, but I'm probably not going to be the one that is. And so I realized that that was a belief that I had to square off with, that was something that I had to really work to overcome, because if I was going to be successful, like that belief could not come with me. And so I would go into meditation and I would feel into the version of myself that didn't have that belief, the version of myself that was wealthy, successful, that had clients, that was loving her work, loving her life. And that is some of the work that I would do in my meditations. And until that belief was like no longer present in my life, that was something I was doing every single day. And were there days that I didn't want to do that? Yes, absolutely. But I used to ask myself, like, Kyra, if you really believed that this meditation was going to create abundance and generate wealth in your life, like, would you get up? Would you not do it? And so for me, I really believed, and I had started seeing evidence in my life of the work working. And so I kept showing up for myself. And what I noticed within my business was that it was never something where I really had to go looking for, like people would just start coming to me. And in fact, it's funny because I tell people that, like, the way in which my first client actually signed up to work with me, of course, it was the time when I went live, but I wasn't selling. I went live, but I didn't do my hair. I went live, but I had no idea what I was going to say. I actually came back from a run and I had a gray sweatshirt on. My hair was in a bun. I was sweaty. My face was red. And I just had this like message on my heart that I wanted to share. And so I did that. And after I did that, someone reached out to me and she's like, how can I work with you? And so what I've noticed in doing this work too is that it's not that life becomes easier, because trust me, I'm challenged greatly all the time. Like, I don't know about other people doing this work, but like creating your future, it requires a lot of courage and it requires discipline to keep showing up for yourself, but it also requires a level of trust in your ability to consciously create the life that you desire. And so my experience has been that every time I show up for myself, every time that I do a meditation, every time that I trust my intuition, which I've also found that the more I do this work, the more I connect with my intuition, and the more I'm connected to that, the easier it is for me to make choices. So I tell people that a theme in my experience since doing this work is that oftentimes the choices that I'm making don't make a whole lot of logical sense, but they make all the sense to my senses. And so there were a lot of people in my world that I had to stop sharing like what I was doing because they thought I was crazy, right? So for example, when I hired my first business coach, I put myself back into debt to do that. That was a $20,000 investment. I had never spent money like that before in my life. And yet there was this part of me that was like, you're meant to do this, like do it. And so I started trusting that more, and I started living outside of like the realm of what was reasonable. And I was making really unreasonable, bold moves. And the more that I did that, the more that the universe was starting to reflect those decisions and show me evidence of the work working. And like, for example, I remember when I came across this woman and I knew I was supposed to work with her. And it was a 6-figure investment. I had never invested that kind of money before, let alone on a person, right? On a mentor. But I knew I was supposed to do it. And when I made that investment, I believe it was May, June, July. I think it was 3 months later that I then had a 6-figure month in my own business. And so I have found that in continuing to meditate, continuing to go to these events. I mean, I'm going to event number 12 this month, event number 13 next month. It has just been the most rewarding experience, because the truth is that it doesn't feel good to quit on yourself. When you say that you're going to do something and then you come back into your life and you don't show up for yourself, that doesn't feel good. So what I've actually found is that the amount of self-love I have for the effort that I have put forth in sitting down and meditating when I don't feel like it, like there are days where I sit and I meditate and the entire meditation is just me overcoming the urge to get up. It's still a victory. It's still that drop in the ocean. And then of course there are moments or there's days where I'm meditating and it's bliss the entire time, and it's a reminder of why I continue to labor for that moment and to show up for myself. And so some of the other things that I would do, so back when Dr. Joe used to do mind movies, I had an Escalade in my mind movie. And so I would look at that all the time. And then I would do these walking meditations, and there happened to be the exact Escalade that I wanted within my neighborhood. So I would put on the walking meditation and I would walk up to this person's Escalade because it was always parked outside, and kind of look at it. I'd slow down, and there were a couple times I'd walk up to it as if it was mine. I didn't care. Like, either this person constantly sees me and they're like, I'm about to call the cops, or they're not seeing this and that's good for me. But I would do things that would put myself in the experience of having what I wanted. I would go to the dealerships. I would immerse myself in the energy and the frequency of I'm actually creating this, so I might as well go do the things that I'm going to actually do when it's time to do it. And so now that Escalade is in my driveway. And it's the same thing. Like, I had a Doberman in my mind movie. Now he's laying here next to me. So there are so many things that I have done to put myself in the energy of my future. And it wasn't just in my meditations with my eyes closed. It's all the time. There are moments where I'm driving in my car and I'm seeing myself walking on stage, or like there's things that I would constantly do to put myself in that frequency of calling it to me. It's so easy to get distracted in today's world, and I understand that, but you get to consciously create your life. And if I can create these results, anybody can create these results, because I got to tell you, there was a time in my life where I never thought I would get out of debt. And so to go from debt to creating a 7-figure business, to fly first class, here's something else that I used to do. So when I realized, I was like, you know what? I want to start flying first class. I want that experience for myself. you know how like they'll call people in first class basically first, right? And they're always kind of standing there and everyone else is like sitting because they know they have to wait. So I decided what I was going to do before I was actually flying first class was I was going to get up with everybody else in first class. And I was going to wait in line and I was just going to kind of, you know, be in the energy of like, this is going to be me. And so I did that several times at the airport. I don't care how I looked. Now I fly first class. So it's like, what are you willing to do to put yourself in the energy and actually trust that what you desire desires you, and you get to consciously create that? I know what it's like to be broke, and I know what it's like to be in debt, to live paycheck to paycheck, to not be able to do the things. And I realize that I have to know what it's like to be abundant more than I know what it's like to be broke. I have to know what it's like to feel worthy more than I know what it's like to feel unworthy. And so this is what I started giving my time and my energy and my attention to. I literally had to create a different version of myself. And one event was not enough for me to do that. And a one-time meditation was not enough for me to do that. This became an everyday practice for me. And it is still an everyday practice. So everything that I am consciously creating, and I say consciously because you're either creating from your past, which is typically unconscious, because you're not actually giving presence and awareness to what you want, or you're consciously creating your life. And so I'm consciously creating my life. And have I had things that I've had to deal with and challenges? Yes. And have I released people from my life that I love because they were no longer an energetic match? And was it hard? Yes, it was. And so it's not just about doing the meditations and creating an abundance in your life. It's who are you going to be? Who are you going to become in order to actually be the frequency and the energetic match to the things that you desire? But if I can do this work, which by the way, I am so grateful. And I think that gratitude, actually, Dr. Joe says, gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. There is not a single day that I go into my car where I'm not overwhelmed with gratitude and joy and love. And I keep myself in that frequency. And when I'm out of it, I check myself because it's necessary. Like, I'm human, right? But this is the work that I have done, and I'm so grateful. And I just really want to encourage you to show up for yourself, to keep going, to do this work. What else is there to do? You can watch Netflix anytime. I love you. I hope this was inspiring for you, and whew, you're worth it.